All right, all right, all right. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the 58th Press Row Hangout. Wow, I can't believe we've done that many. Brian Weedi, you're already shaking your head. Did I get the number wrong?
No, that's I believe that's the right number. I was shaking my head at the thought of the number of hours we put in. I can go check on my YouTube page because I have a playlist for it, but
Right.
it's got to be like 120 hours or something at this point.
Well,
But what about all the after hours? That's where it gets interesting.
that's where it gets pretty crazy. That other man right there is TJ Lyerman from That Sports Gamer. TJ, how are you, sir?
Rich doing real good. Freezing today, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I walked outside. I generally speaking don't wear coats because I go from my house to my car
Yep.
to the office. I'm outside for a grand total of about 45 seconds. Today was one of those days where I'm like, yeah, a coat probably would have been a good idea.
I even checked my phone to see how cold it was, and it was balmy 28 degrees.
All right, so lots to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about some of the news for the just announced, although we all knew, everybody in the world knew it was coming, MLB 15, some interesting stuff there. We're going to talk about some really interesting stuff about NBA 2K15. I'm very excited about that. And some other really interesting stuff has come up in the world of sports video games, even though it is December, which is typically a very slow period. But first, I'm going to spend a moment allowing Mr. Brian Weedi to bask in the glow of his championship caliber Super Bowl winning team strolling into Philadelphia and absolutely obliterating the hapless, embarrassing Philadelphia Eagles. Brian, you saw this coming a mile away, didn't you?
I felt it for a few weeks. I was talking with a buddy of mine after the Cardinals game, which was 3 games ago, when they started playing like I knew they could, and you could just see it in the defense. And then I tweeted after the first defensive drive of this Eagles game, I said the defense came to play today because you could just tell it was just like the Super Bowl. There was a Cam Chancellor hit on a guy crossing the middle, sent a message, and I said the defense is going to be locked down today. So the Eagles just caught him at the wrong time of year. I mean, it's just reminiscent of how they were playing in the Super Bowl last year and in the playoff run, and then Russell Wilson's just at the top of his game right now. He's doing everything. So it's exciting here. We just got to get past the Cardinals and get into the top 1 or 2 seeds. But you're so negative about the Eagles, Rich. They're still 9-4. The problem for you is the last 7 teams that have played the Seahawks have lost the next week. So I'm actually rooting for the Eagles to beat the Cowboys next week, but I'm not sure I like their chances after hearing that.
Now, the problem, Brian Weedi, is that I've been dealing with this for 37 years.
Hey,
Okay?
until last year, I was dealing with similar. I just wanted a Super Bowl before I died. That was
Big qualifier until last year when your team actually won the Super Bowl. Look, I'm a very positive guy. I enjoy life. I'm very blessed. I have everything in the world a guy could ever want. So I'm allowed to be however I want to be with the Philadelphia Eagles, a team I have loved since boyhood. It doesn't matter who the owner is. It doesn't matter who the coach is. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Whenever it comes down to it, they lose. Whether it's in the Super Bowl, whether, which they've only gotten to twice in their, history of the Super Bowl, or whether it's a big game where winning yesterday would have vaulted them to a top seed potential status. They don't win, and if I were like so many people on Twitter, respond to me, they're like, dude, what? Relax. I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm not freaking out. It's just the resignation of when this happens over the course of 20 and 30 years. I get a little emotional, and that's all there is to it. I mean, I love the Eagles. I'm always going to love them, and maybe one day they will do something that the Eagles have never done, which is win a Super Bowl. But it's very frustrating when no matter what decade it is, no matter who the coach, the quarterback is, that they do the same thing that they have done so many times, which is play poorly in a big game when they could have stepped up and made a statement. That's what it's about. And Brian, you know exactly what I'm talking about because until last year, you had many of those same kinds of situations yourself.
Yeah, I had moments. We lived off moments here. The Beastquake run and all these great moments we've had in the last 10 seasons or so. Since I've been a season ticket holder at least, and then before that watching it, there were fewer. But I would go through a year and then something bad would happen, and it wasn't. I didn't get angry. I'd just be like, well, there goes another year of my life. Because then you got to start all over next season. There's no guarantees, no matter who you are, that next season you're going to be any good. One injury could derail the whole thing. So I understand that frustration, but it's still 9-4. And that's 10 days after you went down, and nobody expected you guys to beat the Cowboys in Dallas.
But here's the thing, Brian. They're 9-4, but they have been completely dismantled by the two best teams in their own conference. They were taken apart by the Packers at Lambeau, and they were taken apart by the Seahawks at home. So, barring some sort of miracle, they're not better than those two teams. And if you're not better than those two teams, they're going to do what they did like last year, for example, which is lose at home in the first round. So,
Rich, it's matchups, Rich. It's matchups, and Seattle is a horrible matchup for any team that try to go vertical. This offense that Chip Kelly has, it's not going to work against the Seahawks defense. They don't care if you're up tempo. It doesn't matter. They're still going to get physical on you. And the Broncos learned that last year. The teams that beat the Seahawks are the physical, run the ball down your throat teams like the 49ers used to be.
It would be nice just once for the Eagles to be the best team in the NFL. Just once. That's all. Go ahead, TJ.
Rich, a very wise woman once said, "Shake it off." But just look on the bright side. Spring training is in like 3 months. Mets are going to be mediocre as always, and you'll have something to look forward to.
Well, speaking of something to look forward to, I am very blessed that both of my parents are the alumni of the University of Alabama, and I was born in the shadow of the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and guess who's made it to the college football playoff? So again, I want to talk about this for a second. The college football playoff, lots of controversy about the who got in particular Ohio State over TCU and or Baylor. I'm curious, TJ Lauerman, have you watched any of the college football? What are your thoughts on the whole kerfuffle around the college football playoff?
Rich, I've seen about 648 college football games this year. That's a complete lie. I've actually watched one game. I like the 4-team setup. Going to more teams is just going to be even stupider.
Agreed.
Because, hey, next year Alabama can lose 2 games, and they'll still be in the top 8.
You're right.
And then people are going to be like, oh, well, this team's undefeated, but no, Alabama's going to get in because they're just better, and they sell more tickets. And that's really all this comes down to. Making more money for the Vizio Fiesta Bowl. Is that what it is this year, I believe?
Maybe.
And Beef O'Brady Bowl and whatever else.
There are so many bowls. There's going to be sooner or later. There's going to be a Pasta Padre Bowl.
Who got the sponsorship for the most winner? Like, what's the national championship sponsor? Do they have a separate one this year or no?
I don't know. Probably AT&T, but I don't know because all I know is that Alabama's playing Ohio State in the something or other Sugar Bowl. But I will say this: number one. And I'm obviously a lifelong college football fan. I was a college football fan before I even knew other sports existed. I really actually, I'm on record as saying this, I thought the BCS actually did a really good job every year getting the 2 best teams to play each other, and I thought going to a 4-team playoff would devalue the regular season and cause more arguments than the BCS did. I was half right. There are more arguments about the college football playoff, the 4 versus the 5 and the 6, than there were over the 1 and the 2. But this college football season, the regular season, was not devalued. In fact, it was quite the opposite. They found what I feel like is the perfect measure because those regular season games were huge. Even Alabama had to win out. After their tough loss to Mississippi State, they had to win every single game they played, including beating a tough Arkansas team, beating a tough Auburn team, and winning the SEC title game. They had to win it all to make it in. Had they lost any of those games, they would have been out. Brian Weedi, do you agree that this the 4 teams is actually the right number, like I do?
No.
Really?
I think any sensible person would say it's not. It's got to be 8 teams. You don't want to go beyond that. There's no reason to go beyond that. Or 6 with 2 byes, I think, would be ideal. It's too much. You get into too many teams bunched together, and there's no defining factor for any of them. I mean, the whole debate over TCU and Baylor is ridiculous. It's like Baylor won, yeah, but they were at home and they barely won, and it was like 61-58 or something, and TCU was winning most of that game.
Baylor Bears.
First,
I see what you did there. Barely won.
That's you know me. I'm quick on my feet with that stuff. But that was good. Now I'm off track. It's like okay. Ohio State all of a sudden is in, and they have a third-string quarterback who played one game, and he played well in one game, so now they're in the top 4. And TCU dropped for no particular reason because there's no championship game for their conference, and the debate between the teams, it gets really muddled at that point. And there usually is 6 to 8 very good teams. Now there's probably 2 or 3 elite teams. I mean, if you look at the spreads, Oregon is favored by I think 8.5, and Alabama's favored by 9. So it's not like the 3 and the 4 seeds are right there with the top 2 in most people's minds. Now, if there are a couple blowouts here, I couldn't see TCU or Baylor winning the national championship anyway. But it would have been nice for them to have a chance. I mean, there was a Marshall team that was undefeated. Say they did go undefeated. They weren't even in the top 25 when they were undefeated near the end of the season. So the whole idea that this is the playoffs, the whole season is the playoffs, it's really not true for a lot of schools unless you start in the top 25.
I will say this, and again, I love Alabama, but I just love college football. They nailed it. I could not agree more strongly with these matchups. Alabama versus Ohio State, Oregon versus Florida State. You look over the last 6 to 8 years, these are the 4 most consistently great schools. And none of them that I believe have played each other for the national championship. Alabama and Oregon have not played for the championship. Alabama and Ohio State have not played each other. Alabama and Florida State have not played each other. But those teams have either won national championships or been right there. I love the matchups. I'm sorry if you're a fan of Baylor or TCU. Those programs do not match Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, or Oregon at any level. They just don't. And I think they got it all right. And again, even if Alabama had lost the SEC title game, I would not be complaining if they didn't get in, right? It's not a pro-Alabama thing. It's just I think these are the 4 most compelling matchups. They're 4 huge schools. All of them have great pedigrees, and I think they did a terrific job. So I'm excited. TJ, are you going to watch these games?
Yes, I will watch the 2 main ones and then the final. But see, here's the thing that I don't like about college football, and I learned this from my extensive time with NCAA football, possibly one of the greatest games that we've ever lost. Like if Alabama sucked last year, let's say they went 3 and 10 games? 11
That's
games?
impossible, but
12.
okay.
Let's just say that happened.
13 games, yeah.
So they were ranked 27th to start this year. They could have the same year that they had this year, and they would not be in the top 4.
You're completely wrong because they're playing the SEC. So if Arkansas, let's take a real world scenario. Arkansas is a very good team that unfortunately plays in the SEC West, so they get beat by virtually everybody. If Arkansas had done what Alabama had done this year, they would have started off unranked, and if they went 11-1 in the SEC, they absolutely would be one of the top 4 teams, guaranteed. But that's because they're in the SEC. If they were in the Mountain West or they're if you're not in the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big Ten, or the Big 12, then or the ACC, you're right. But any of those power conferences, those big 5 conferences, if you go undefeated, you'll be in that top 4 or 1 loss for the most part.
Yeah, and if you expand it to 8 teams, you're going to have power conferences with 2 losses that are going to end up getting in. It's just
That's right.
Not fair. That's why I like NCAA time for March Madness.
Yeah,
anybody has a chance to win.
Yeah, but too bad college basketball is a terrible product. But anyway, all right, moving on. MLB 15, the show. A lot of good stuff came out, tied mostly to the PlayStation experience out in Las Vegas this week. Some very interesting stuff. I'm curious, Mr. Brian Weedeye, what of the details that came out for the show hit home for you the most?
Oh, it's the cover, Ashley. It's what I love more than anything is the cover of the games. No, it's actually, let's see. I'm looking at the list now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel that much of this is too terribly compelling. What I do like seeing the most is the improved load times, actually,
Yeah.
which is not something that would be thrilling, and you kind of take it for granted when you have a game that's quick. Now, the show and NCAA football, they were notorious for slow load times, and that continued in the new generation. My thought was, hey, here's the stronger hardware. Now we're going to have quicker load times for the show, which is more important than maybe any other sports game because of Road to the Show mode, how often you're going in and out of games, loading in and out. And the wait times are just excruciating. So the improved load times off of the initial list is probably the most gets me most excited, or because I believe they can actually deliver on it. You never really know with feature lists what they're gonna come through with and how effective it's gonna be. But if it's something substantially faster, that's really going to be a benefit throughout. No matter what you're playing in the game, you're going to appreciate it.
TJ Larriman, what on the list has you either most pleased or most interested or most excited?
It's definitely got to be the complete or I don't know if it's complete, but they say Diamond Dynasty is getting revamped, and I have not liked Diamond Dynasty in years, so I'm hoping we can get something more akin to a Madden or a FIFA. Because the best part about Madden and FIFA is I learned who a lot of mid-level players were just from playing Ultimate Team. And MLB with in Diamond Dynasty with the fake players, you don't get to learn like the fourth and fifth starters on pro teams. You get the aces, and then they'll have fake guys that are built up, and then you never face those low-tier guys. So people are hearing, trades like Gerardo Parra might get traded. But there's a lot of people that have no idea who Gerardo Parra is. And it gives more light to the sport when you have those mid-level players getting some recognition.
I personally really am intrigued by the legends. Now, I'm people who know me know that I'm a sucker for historic players. I love the NBA 2K11 Legends mode more than probably any sports mode I've played in the last 10 years. I really enjoy the history of baseball. We've opined on this show several times as to ways that we think that MLB The Show could make much better use of historical moments and historical figures. And the reason I say intrigued is because they're a little vague with how these legends are going to be used. So they say they're introducing 30 iconic MLB alumni into the virtual player card pool, which immediately makes you think, okay, Diamond Dynasty only, one representative for each team. These players span every historic area of the last 70 years. Love that. But it says also, like all of our universal rewards, you have a chance of finding a historic virtual player card to add to your collection and utilize, and here's the kicker, throughout MLB 15 The Show. Brian Wiedeck, what do you think that means?
I wish I knew. I don't really understand what it means. I mean, I get the sense that with the show, unlike EA and unlike 2K, who tend to focus on here's a player, he's in your ultimate team or you're my team, or here's a currency and it's for this and this. The show tends to give you a little more freedom with everything they put in as far as options too. They always leave old options in. So whether maybe you can start a new road to the show with a legend, or maybe you can sign him as a free agent. I don't know that, but as far as going and saying that, yeah, it's seems like it's game wide. I'm not sure how they're implementing that, but I think it's probably going to be better than if it was just legends in Diamond Dynasty.
TJ Larriman, what do you think it's going to mean?
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I think most likely they're just going to be, well, it's definitely going to be in Diamond Dynasty, but they'll probably be able to put into the free agent pool for franchise, and you can probably do kind of like in CFM where you can just start as them in Road to the Show, which would be kind of cool, skip getting to the pros, but that kills the name Road to the Show. But maybe you just have like, actually, it'd be cool. I mean, there's 30 of them, so I doubt they would do this, is that you do Road to the Show as them, or even with your guy, and throughout your career, you're compared to them to see where you stack up. That'd be something interesting to throw into a mode that's getting a little stale.
Any other thoughts, Brian, on how you would like to see them implement, as opposed to guessing what they're going to do? Just what would get you, Brian Weedeye, excited to use the legends, the 30 new legends in the show?
It would probably have to be a separate mode, some kind of legendary type challenges with those guys, or scenarios, recreating various scenarios. I think there's a lot. We've talked about it before. There's a lot of rich history for Major League Baseball. Now, it may not be the same draw of basketball, for example, like NBA 2K hit on a few years ago and since, but there are those moments, and in baseball, it's more about moments than single game performances, unless it's sometimes you get those from pitchers. Bumgarner, obviously, just this past postseason, but I think there are ways to tap into that history. Now, the problem is I don't think they have the budget that 2K had for NBA 2K, so then you're getting 30 legends here as opposed to full teams and stuff where you would really start to get enriched by that history. So I'm not sure if that's something they can do or not, or if they would feel it would bring in enough sales to justify it. But yeah, I'm not sure if just having a few individual players, one player from each team or whatever, I'm not sure how they could do that in a way that's really compelling to me.
Another one of the items that they listed was the major graphical improvements. Now, I'm very comfortable saying that of all of the sports games this year, MLB The Show was the best looking. I mean, it looks beautiful. The crowds are terrific. The stadiums are great. So many of the animations are spectacular. And I played a lot of the show, and I would regularly, even months after I had first played it, I would just take a moment and be like, wow, man, that looks great. But yet one of the things that they mentioned is that they're going to have significant improvements, introduction of real-time seasonal sun and shadows, revamped night lighting, and enhanced player personality. I mean, TJ, did they really leave that much on the table, and not purposefully, just because of time, that they could make what they call major graphical improvements? Are these the kind of things that you think we're going to be able to really notice from year 1 to year 2 with MLB The Show on the PS4?
Yeah, I think if they can revamp the lighting completely, it'll be, a night and day kind of change. Because we've even seen some screenshots just from Madden. When you compare last gen to this gen, it looks pretty drastic. But the thing in these that actually really excites me the most is the personality stuff. I'm really kind of tired of seeing the same 6 home run swings and the same 3 ways to go grab a ground ball. So hopefully we can get more of that. Having Puig put the arms up, that'll be sweet after a home run, and I just hope that's the little stuff they need to improve on to make the game feel more alive.
We also need the ability to charge Puig and tackle him and punch him because we're so offended.
It's a minigame.
He's broken an unwritten rule, TJ. Hey. So we've got to make him pay for that, and then I got to hit the next guy. My pitcher's got to go out there and send a message. We're not going to take that. So
you should.
That's new St. Louis Cardinals mode in this game.
They also make it way too hard to hit people in this game, so they should make that easier.
So Brian, you had, I believe, alluded to this, and I believe you had a post about this. This is actually relatively late in the cycle for Sony to start releasing details about the show. Do you think that there's a lot more to come, or do you think that they sort of lined up what they think that the main sort of focus of MLB 15 is going to be?
Yeah. So normally in a typical year, they release something about the cover in early to mid-November. And the last couple of years, along with the cover stuff, they've released a few feature notes, similar to this year. So they held it because of the PlayStation Experience stuff. So I think there's just as much stuff to come as there would be in any other normal year. The interesting thing to me about the release date, more so than how it affects the show, because there's plenty of time. They're going to reveal a ton. They didn't talk about franchise, road to the show, presentation, commentary everybody wants to hear about, online. They didn't talk about any of that stuff yet, so that's still to come. The interesting thing to me about the release date is that it basically confirms there's no Xbox baseball game again this year. MLB, legitimate game this year on Xbox, because the contract with MLB allows them to release as early as the first Tuesday in March, and if there was a competitor coming, they wouldn't give that competitor 4 weeks to sell before their game came out. So it allows them to move it back, and I think that probably benefits the game in the long run. Just like Madden moved back closer to the start of the regular season, the interest is higher. People really, other than the hardcore baseball fans, nobody's paying attention to spring training. So pushing it back towards the start of the regular season will probably help their sales a little bit. I mean, it happened last year. They had to push it back just to delay it, both versions. And it probably worked out well for them in that regard. So now they'll have the full year cycle this time, and it's just unfortunate for anyone with an Xbox who still hopes that one day a baseball game's going to come down the pike, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, it seems.
I am completely fine with the release date of late March. I mean, number one, every day that you give that team an opportunity to make the game better, I'm all for it. Obviously, these are digital games in the digital era, so there will always be day one patches and 30-day patches and 60-day patches. So, it's not as if whatever comes out on March 30th is the final product. But I'm completely fine with that release date, not only to give them a little more time, but as you said, Brian, I mean, spring training is not a very exciting time. In fact, people like spring training because it's not exciting, right? It's Florida sunshine, it's Arizona sunshine, it's leisurely games, it's seeing the rookies, the veterans, getting their swings in or their pitches in. So I'm completely fine with that.
And there's a lot of stuff that happens with as far as rosters go. And if you release at the start of March, like has typically been the case, and you want to start a season or a road to the show, you're starting before you really know how teams are going to solidify their final rosters, and there's a lot of still player movement at that point, so you end up with really inaccurate kind of things that you're trapped into for not just one year with a game, but potentially carrying over to future years with the save transfers. So I think getting more accurate rosters right up out of the gate will probably be beneficial as well.
Agreed.
But then we still have to wait another month for the great folks at the Operation Sports forums to put out the better rosters that you want to use. So that's the only downside to that.
Brian, you mentioned that there's a lot of things that they haven't mentioned yet that you expect them to mention. Are there any elephants in the room? Do we read anything into online improvements not being mentioned? Do we read anything into no road to the show improvements? I mean, those are two things that to me personally stick out as if I want to hear them start talking about MLB 15 the show. And as a huge fan of last year's PS4 debut, those are the two things that I want to see. Just because I want to see them doesn't mean that most other people do too. This is a purely personal thing, but I can tell you that I really wish they had said, whether it's accurate or not, because we know these claims are sometimes dubious, that they were putting top men on online experience and that road to the show was going to be refreshed or new or even dramatically improved. Do we read anything into the fact that there was nothing about that at all said?
At this time of the year, I would say no. And like you said, they can come out and say all they want about online. No one's going to believe it until they prove it. But I do have some concern as far as it relates to Road to the Show and franchise. And we've talked about this before because they do have now this save migration from one year to the next. Does that mean, and I don't know from a technical standpoint if it necessarily does, but I suspect it does that mean they can't really transform those modes? They can't dramatically change them because the saves from the previous year have to work properly with the new system, the new setup, the new features. It's a technical, I would think, nightmare as far as that is. You can't imagine it's not going to be possible to go from let's say a traditional career mode like they have now. They can't turn it into a story mode like NBA 2K has done with their career mode because the saves, they wouldn't make any sense. That save would never apply to this whole brand new system that they would put in place for a story or for a different type of career mode. So they're probably limited in what they can do as far as improving those modes. And so that's what worried me a little bit when they first talked about this idea of save migration, was that they can't really reform those modes. They can't dramatically change them. And so they're going to have to make new modes. They're going to have to come up with something brand new and fresh, I think, as far as at least Road to the Show goes. They're going to have to come up with a new career mode separate from that, or else we're going to be stuck with basically the same thing for even longer than we have been already.
I'm going to say something very controversial right now, but TJ Larman, is it an overstatement to say that right now on the PlayStation 4, the MLB The Show online experience is serviceable?
Rich, being that I think we were the only two people using it a couple nights ago, might have played into it being serviceable for us. But, I mean, for us, it's worked competently multiple times, but I think we may have been the only people actually playing on it last time that we played.
I mean, we're both shying around the fact that competent does not mean good, but competent does mean that we have been able to play each other online. And yeah, there's weird graphical hiccups, but the timing of the hitting and the pitching seems to be accurate. We were able to make plays on defense. We didn't have wild, crazy stuff. In fact, when we played Game 6 of our 7-game series the other night, I was able to somehow make a dramatic, over-the-fence catch. I still lost the game, of course.
Well, hey.
So
you tried, Rich. You tried.
Could it be that they might be doing subtle improvements to online? They may have sort of gotten over the biggest hurdles, and now they're just going to kind of keep plugging away, and it won't be sort of trumpeted. It might be the kind of thing that they might just be able to just have fixed without having to make big announcements. Is that a plausible theory, or am I just talking crazy talk, TJ?
I hope so, because most of the fixes they would need to do are probably server side, so that's stuff they can work on pretty much all the time since nobody's using those servers. But yeah, I hope they can fix it because I want to play the show online, and I think it was 2 years ago I battled through playing about 50 Diamond Dynasty games online, and it almost drove me insane, especially at the end where it was literally everybody was either striking out or hitting home runs. There was no such thing as like a single. It was kind of ridiculous.
Right.
But we had pretty good luck the last couple times we played. I'm not skeptical. I'm hopeful, but also very, very skeptical at the same time.
That's every year. That's every year with this.
But it was better. I mean, MLB 13 was a train wreck. MLB 14 at the start was bad, but they made some improvements and it got better. So hopefully they can continue to improve. It doesn't need. I mean, it would be great if it were like silky smooth and you couldn't tell the difference between online and offline. I hate to say it because people love to throw tomatoes at me when I say this stuff, but if it were as good as Madden, I'd be fine with that. I would be absolutely fine with that. Last thing on MLB The Show, we talked about it, Brian, obviously right now. Do people want changes to Road to the Show? Do you think there is truly critical mass with that, or do people like Road to the Show how it is and they just want to bring their guys forward every single year, which they are getting the opportunity to do?
I think it's probably the number of people who probably want to flip from one year to the next with their guy, or it's probably more limited than we thought. I kind of suspect that people like starting fresh every year. Now that's just my perception on this. If you go to TJ now and then bounce back to me, I'm going to check something
Sure.
as far as community voting goes, because Road to the Show is always in the mix for the best career mode at the end of the year. But I don't think it's won the last few times, so I'm going to check on that and I'll get back to you.
So TJ,
because there's two things I actually wanted to bring up while
excellent,
Brian's
go
doing
for
that,
it.
and we can come back.
Perfect.
Two things I found very interesting was actually the pricing for this year's game. The PS4 is going to be $59.99. The PS3 copy is going to be $39.99. And interestingly enough, the Vita version is only going to be $19.99, and that's only going to be downloadable. So even if you go to the store, you're just going to get a card with a code on it. That's good for me as someone that's going to buy the Vita version and the PS4 version. And the last few years, stores and websites weren't having those bundles anymore. So now getting the two games for $80 is a good deal, like it was 2 years ago when stores were actually having the deal. The only thing I'm really worried about is if the PS3 version is going to be $39.99. It seems kind of quick to drop the price there. So I don't know if that's going to go into like automatic legacy mode, like how FIFA and stuff does after a couple years on the last gen. And like Brian was saying, with the saves coming forward, if that starts going into legacy mode, do all those modes like the franchise mode to the show just also go into legacy mode to keep those saves coming forward?
I'm sure they do, because we've seen dramatic drop-offs in the number of copies of games being sold for those older consoles. And I'm totally fine with that, as long as they're upfront with it, right? As long as they don't sort of pull any of the FIFA shenanigans, as long as they come out and say, basically, this is a roster update. It might have a few modifications here or there. The FIFA being $20 is really interesting. You would be hard-pressed to find a more complete sports experience than MLB The Show on the Vita. I mean, my goodness, it has all of the main modes that the console game does. You can cross-save between the Vita and the PlayStation 4 and back. I mean, it's really an astounding game. If it is just a roster update at $20, that is a heck of a great deal for a roster update. And if they have some of the additional features like the Legends, I don't know what kind of graphical improvements they can make, because boy, that's a good-looking game on the Vita. I think it's a great idea. Going pure digital makes complete sense. The Vita, for Vita owners, it's virtually a digital machine anyway. The only problem is, well, there's two problems. I don't know that one is a problem and one is just an item. The problem is that the memory cards for the Vita remain stubbornly expensive.
It's ridiculous. I just deleted Uncharted, which I'm now never going to finish, because I needed a couple gigs so I can put my free copy of Need for Speed Most Wanted,
which is a very good game.
PlayStation Experience.
Very good game. And then the thing that's not a problem but is interesting is that because it's digital only, that game will be $20 for a year. Like, it ain't gonna drop down to $10 or $5. It's gonna be $20 in July, and now they might have a sale here or a sale there. But as we've seen with digital games, those prices don't change. I mean, we've seen all sorts of anecdotal evidence, but I think unless you have a deal or a sale, some sports games from 2 or 3 years ago that are digital are still like $40 or $50. So that's one of those games where I don't want to say go out and get it day one, because you never know anymore what's going to work and what's not. But it's not one of those situations where you're going to save yourself 50% of the cost of the game waiting for a month or two, because that ain't going to happen because it's digital.
Yeah.
Brian, you got your numbers in front of you?
Yeah. So I looked at the voting for Best Career Mode, and the show has won 2 out of the last 4 years. It actually won last year for Best Career Mode, but it was mostly not because Road to the Show was anything special last year, but because of all the server issues with NBA 2K14 and people's inability to play NBA 2K14's Career Mode at times. So that one it edged it out because of that. But I definitely see it in many places, on my site, at Operation Sports, on Twitter, a growing kind of distress about the mode just not having evolved at all, and just we're doing the same thing over and over every year, and you're making minor tweaks to it, but at what point are you going to do something big with this mode and really just give it a refresh and give me something new to play? So carrying it over year to year, I think if it doesn't change big, if they don't come up with something new, then it's really going to start sinking in on people that it's just getting old.
Yeah, I mean, I'm done with it. I've been done with it for 2 years. I can't even play it. I've played this mode forever. I'm completely finished with it. And yet I still love the show. Like, I love the game. I love playing a 9-inning game so much. It is such a wonderful experience. It's to this day, I mean, heck, TJ and I, we played a game last night or Sunday night or Saturday. One of these nights recently we played it. It's that good of a game. So it's almost like, man, if they introduced a new way to play Road to the Show, whether it's a story or whether it's just a different experience, that would really be amazing. Well, all right, I want to move to NBA 2K15. Anyone who has been following me or listening to the show for the last couple of months knows that I am a junkie with NBA 2K15. It didn't grab me right at the start, but for when did the game come out? It's early
October.
December. The game came out
2 months
right.
ago.
So probably about 3 weeks after release, I really started to settle in, and I play NBA 2K15 as much as I can. That doesn't mean I play it all the time, but I play it most nights. It's my only treadmill game right now. I play my career on the treadmill. I'm really into my GM. I'm having a great season, and I saw when Brian, you posted the list of the improvements that they made in patch number 2 today. I was astounded because, to me, what NBA 2K15, the second patch, did is a couple things, but more than anything else, it proves to me that the guys making NBA 2K15 are absolutely listening to their fans, because the things that they have improved go across the board, and they address virtually aspects of every part of the game. For example, I mentioned that I am a big player of my GM. The only real problem that I have with my GM is the fact that the AI doesn't shoot three-pointers very much. And I shoot a lot of three-pointers because it's fun. When you make a three-pointer, you feel good, right? It's just, I got some good three-point shooters. I'm playing my season with the Nets. I got Randy Foye, who I traded for. I got Joe Johnson. These are good three-point shooters. And when they got an open shot, I hit them. I don't like spam the three-pointers because I got Brook Lopez. I try to work it inside. I got Darren Williams, who's really good, although both Joe Johnson and Darren Williams are hurt right now. But one of the little things that they had listed was that they are improving the AI usage of three-point shots. Not just the percentages, but that was one of the things, but also just the AI realizing where they are. And one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes the AI will shoot when their foot is on the line. And they said, well, they're going to be a little more aware of where they are and take a step back. That is great. Another thing that they said, and this is where I know that they're listening, because I watched some of the the Sim Nation podcast with Dazar and Scott O'Gallagher, and I give those guys credit because they bring on some of the fans of the game, and those guys let them have it. One of the little things that was actually interesting to me about NBA 2K15 was that there's really no way to walk the ball up the court. You're either really lollygagging or you're running up the court, as the user, as you're doing it. But they added a casual walk-up feature. I'm like, wow, that is great. But then I'm looking through, and then in my career, which is a mode that I play a lot, they added a bunch of little updates to my career. One of the big things that I have noticed, and I've seen a lot of people complaining about, is that your teammates, when you pass the ball, for some reason, just like your teammates aren't smart enough. They don't shoot it, or they take bad shots, and they are improving that. I mean, and I have a few more things I want to get to, but I don't want to take all the time. I mean, Brian, this to me, between what they've done with the roster updates, which they've done a great job of improving this year, and now this really impressive list of improvements they made to this game, I'm very impressed. And to me, it feels like these guys are really listening to their fans. Do you get that same impression?
Yeah, look, the NBA 2K series in the past, their post-release support has been pretty poor. So this year, they've definitely taken a step up. Like you mentioned, the roster updates are much more consistent, and they're much more thorough. This patch, now they've generally done a late November, early December patch, which incorporates community feedback and stuff, but those, I don't get the sense that it was this good. It was this significant. It was this much of an impact in many different areas. I played one game of my career earlier just to play it and just to get a sense of any changes, and I noticed a few things immediately. I mean, if I hadn't have seen the patch notes, if I hadn't have posted that, I would have noticed these things. I would have noticed that the presentation overlays, when the commentators say, look at these things, they actually show up now. It's kind of a bummer it took 2 months for that to happen, but they show up now. There were more fouls in the game. I wasn't getting penalized teammate grade for committing a foul, which has always been an absurd. That's always been an absurd thing to me. Like, players foul during the course of a game, it doesn't make them a worse player unless they're fouling out or they're getting into foul trouble all the time.
Now, to be fair, though, sometimes you do make a good foul and you get credit for a good foul. That it's not like that never happened. I didn't want to.
Yeah. So, but I never even wanted to attempt to go for a steal because then if I get a reach-in foul, then there goes my teammate grade down half a grade. I'm like, come on, guys, commit fouls in the NBA. So there was that, and then there's also now the shot meter when you're taking free throws, which is nice instead of just having to guess or understand exactly. I got a sense of when to release on my free throws, but I never had any feedback on that. Like it says, you're slightly early. Most of the times I'd be slightly early, and how slightly early am I? So now you can know. You can actually see that. So there was some really good stuff I noticed in that first game I played. And then, this patch really covers everything. One thing I was excited to see, I'm not sure if I remember, was there a My Team section or not? There was My League, and there was...
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I actually was... If that's true, I'd have to double-check. I'm pretty sure there wasn't a My Team section in the patch notes, which actually makes me really happy.
Yeah.
Because the focus in the EA games is so often on Ultimate Team. The focus on from 2K last year was heavily My Team.
Yeah, I can confirm there is no My Team section. Yep.
Yeah, so obviously gameplay still factors into my team when you're playing the game.
Yeah.
But to see that they're putting their focus in on the other modes and on gameplay and on presentation, that to me is what I'm most satisfied about this update, is that they targeted things that I think matter to most people instead of just what matters to them making money. Here's a new way we can introduce something in My Team or improve it so that people spend more money. Because they lost a lot of people last year, maybe not sales-wise, but they lost a lot of people in how they perceive 2K Sports in their brand when they overextended how they implemented VC. And they backed it off this year a little bit. And, it was still there, but for the most part, it was a really positive step. And to see them putting resources into other areas of the game, and we mentioned this before release, just creating a new franchise mode that was offline, that didn't have VC, just doing that said something big to me. So I'm really happy with what they've done.
I don't know this to be a fact. This is a pure hypothesis. But I have the feeling that by adding community guys that were regularly for the last 5, 10 plus years, community people that would constantly play the game and provide feedback and have podcasts and blogs and things like that, and adding those guys to the NBA 2K team, like Dazar and not necessarily Scott O'Gallagher, but he sort of fits in that mode, and Left Host, I get the sense that this is, if not a direct result, heavily influenced by the fact that they have NBA 2K has recently brought in these outside people who are longtime fans. TJ, do you get that same sense?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Because I feel like a lot of these companies, they make their game, they get in their ways, they hear the feedback, and they're like, yeah, it's a problem, but yeah, we'll fix it in 3 years, 4 years, we'll figure it out. But now that these people that have been out there all this time saying, hey, this is what you need to do, are getting their shot to get their hands in there and actually working on the game to helping make it better, which is definitely what the community wants to see happen and see that their voice is actually getting heard.
You guys were mentioning a few different things that were, or Rich was at least, that you had wanted them to fix and that you had seen other people wanted fixed and then it got fixed or addressed. There was one on TJ's stream when we were doing his Extra Life stream.
Yes.
And there was this guy, Scott and I were playing against in the park. And there's this guy who would do this behind-the-back move, and he just scored on it almost every time. And he's like, oh, we're going to fix that. I'm sick of this. This is awful. We're going to fix that. And they actually did, and that's one of the things in the notes. So I think that's pretty awesome because these guys, they actually play the game, they understand it, and they want it better. Now, you always hear that, yeah, we're listening to feedback. You hear this from every company and stuff. And then maybe they take in the feedback, but they don't take it to heart most of the time. They don't, it becomes a list, and then they prioritize based on their own their own factors and what they feel is best for them more so than what it is best for the gamers. So to see them go at this the way that they have, I think is really encouraging, not just for now, but in the future.
And here's where, and I emailed both of you guys the minute I saw this. This is where my heart jumped a little bit, because there were several things that were added to online leagues, and nobody has railed about the fact that online leagues are disappearing more than me. They have added, and it may sound small, right? But these are things that made online leagues non-playable. For example, they added a league members screen with the ability for the commissioner to kick users from the league, as well as award a win to the user of their choosing. So right now, that automatically means that even though you might not like the entire structure of an online league, the fact that you can kick somebody who can no longer be in the league, instead of have the league just be busted and impossible to move, you can do that, as well as just being able to see that list. That's huge. It might sound small, but for people who play online leagues, that is huge. Also, you can have, it's just better organized, so you have a clear indication of who won and lost playoff games, because the menus weren't very good. And, they also fixed a couple of the bugs related to when you join the online leagues. So immediately, again, even though the leagues are not in a way that we want them to be, we can at least now know that we can give this a shot, and we're going to give online leagues a shot. And that is commendable, because, again, on this huge list of stuff, they could have easily not done that, right? And if you remember last year, when there was feedback to the team, it said online leagues are functioning as designed.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
That is not what happened this year, and I give them a lot of credit. Again, it may sound small to some people, but as a guy who loves to play online with my friends, with the ability to have stats tracked and have a champion, that's huge. TJ, am I overreacting?
No, I'm excited. You guys are very excited for this game, which makes me very excited, because now I have someone to play with.
Right.
And even more excited, we're recording this earlier than normal, so maybe you can set up this league after this, and while you go to sleep, me and Brian can start playing.
Well, we still got a couple other people we're bringing in, so it's not going to happen that quickly.
Well,
but
we need to test it to make sure it works, so we should probably just run a couple games tonight. And then we need to get in the park. I think we're going to join Brian's place.
Oh, you're all coming over. Sunset Beach.
Sunset Beach?
Is that where we're going? Because, I've got my guy now. I'm near the end of my first full season, and because I'm a maniac, I can't sim a game. I have to play every single game. And I got like 5 games left. So he's not good, but he's not bad.
Oh, my guy's good, Rich.
Well, I didn't pay any money to make my guy good, Mr. Lauerman.
My guy. The accusation that I did.
My guy.
I did.
I'm good now. I'm up to 87. Ooh. And it's not because I spend money. It's because I just every day. I haven't been playing it much lately. So every day I've just been using the app and getting.
Oh.
Mine's been
up to 3,000 a day plus the pick'ems for 50 each. So I've been raking that in. So I went in today and I had 38,000 to spend on my guys. So
38,000.
That's just from app use the last 3 weeks or whatever.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Brian, because I use this app every day, and when it was busted over Thanksgiving, I tweeted at Scott O'Gallagher. I'm like, Scott, I don't know who to contact, but if you can fix this app, because now this is what I do. Every day I pick the winners, and every day I go and I get my 3 cards, and miraculously, like 4 days later, it's up and running again. So, TJ, if you haven't gone in a few days, go back in. It should work for you.
Yeah, it hasn't let me log in, so I uninstalled it and I reinstalled it, so...
Yeah. And by the way, another reason that the app is good this year is because it's not tied to your My 2K login. It's tied to your PSN login, which is, or your Xbox One login. And that's just, it's another little thing, but it has made this app, which I use, and you can see here every single day, it has made it better. I mean, I know I sound like I'm gushing, but I'm gushing because I play this game all the time. I love it. It is a terrific game, and I give the guys who make NBA 2K15 a lot of credit for listening to their fans and for reacting and doing some very impressive things. I mean, it's impressive. They didn't have to do all of this stuff. They could have done some of it and pushed off some of the other items. So I'm impressed, Brian Weedeye, and it sounds like you are as well.
Yeah, I have to play it a little more and just see how effective it is in other areas, but it's probably the best effort they've put into a patch, at least that I've seen in a long time or any time.
All right, a couple quickies before we get going. Number one, Bo knows football, Brian Weedeye. What is that all about?
Oh, you're kicking it to me and not the Ultimate Team guy, huh?
Yeah, well, we all know where TJ is going with this. So
I don't even know what Ultimate Team is.
Bo Jackson, he was in NCAA football, and that was a big deal. He was in NCAA football Ultimate Team. NCAA football is no more, so now they're bringing him over to Madden, and he's in Madden Ultimate Team. And if you log into Madden Ultimate Team from December 22nd through January 1st, supposedly you'll get a card of his. You don't have to do anything else, and it's just for a limited time, so it looks like maybe you're only going to get him for 10 games or something. TJ probably knows better what it usually is with that, but not a huge deal in my opinion, but it's this first time into Madden, so cool if you're a fan of his, I suppose.
TJ, we've talked a little bit about how you've been overwhelmed with Madden Ultimate Team since you come back. Have you touched Ultimate Team? And if so, or if not, is Bo Jackson big enough for you to get back into MUT?
Well, the way I see it, there's one of two things is going to happen. A, this card is going to be extremely rare to pull from a pack, and B, it's going to be extremely expensive. So most likely, I'm not getting real Bo Jackson. I've also been selling off / giving away my whole team recently.
I saw that. Yeah, what's that all about?
Yeah, just kind of over the mode, so makes people happy. Happy holidays. So we'll give it all away, make people happy. I think I'm up to like 600-something thousand coin, which I'll give away in a couple weeks. But the way I think they're going to do Bo Jackson, recently, I think it's been pretty much every week, you've been able to get a Madden season edition of a card. I think right now it's LaShawn McCoy. It's an 85 overall rated version, and then after the week or 10 days, it drops down to like a mid-70s card. So he'll be pretty effective for the time that you have him, but once it's over, he'll be kind of worthless, assuming they do it the same way they've been doing it recently. In NCAA, he was pretty ridiculously dominant. Everybody was actually really confused why he wasn't in Madden last year when he was in NCAA, so I guess they were just waiting for this extra year, because they had that crazy Mike Vick card last year. So having a crazy Bo Jackson card this year should pretty much break the game and make it a lot of fun for the people that have it.
All right. The video game awards were this weekend. We'll talk in a moment about the sport/racing genre. But before we do, any quick thoughts? Brian, did you watch the show? And
Yeah.
If so, what did you think about it?
So it wasn't previous video game awards, VGAs or VGX last year. They were just embarrassing. Like you wouldn't want someone
Right.
someone you value to know you watch that, or you wouldn't want them to think that's what the industry is about. That's what people who play games are like. It was just embarrassing. This show was not that. It was almost like a normal award show, with the exception of they do more as far as advertising goes than awards. I mean, half the awards, some of them weren't even on the show. Some of them, Developer of the Year or something was given out while in the audience, just like you also won Developer of the Year for Nintendo. Congratulations.
Yeah, Bungie won 2 awards. They were just like standing there kind of chatting.
With their hands at their sides. Right?
Yeah, so it's really kind of bizarre in that way. And again, it's basically you're watching a commercial within a television show or an award show. The direction was horrible. I mean, half the time they'd cut to a close-up of someone's cheek, like the director's back there, and I'm not even kidding.
I know. That's why I'm laughing.
It was absurd. So the direction was awful. There were some technical issues. The show ran way too long. But otherwise, it was better than it has been in the past, actually.
TJ, your thoughts?
My main thing would be just get rid of the celebrities altogether. Like they had random cuts to Conan O'Brien to do the nominees for the Game of the Year. That was kind of stupid. They had this dude from Imagine Dragons just kind of rambling on for a little bit. That was really pointless. But then they played some song with some guy. They made really amazing music for Nintendo, so that was pretty awesome. But yeah, it just ran really, really long. And at some point in the middle of it, they're like, "Hey, we're at the middle of the show," and everybody was like, "Oh my god!"
That's
I was
when
hoping it would be like 2 hours, and then when it was 3 hours, I was like, "Good." Actually, the good thing was, even though they had partnered with PlayStation and it was on the live events viewer, after 2 hours, that just turned off, which was good because by then I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to play video games and not just watch these commercials." Yeah, that's what makes this a lot different from like regular awards shows, because during the Oscars is movies. You're not seeing ads for the movies that will theoretically be lined up to win next year's Oscars. So it's kind of
Yeah,
weird.
they don't allow that actually, or they're going to start allowing that for ads or just commercials, but not during the show. I mean, it's weird. Could you imagine, like, here's the head of Paramount to come out and talk about his new movie coming out next year? That's basically the stuff that happens at the game award shows. Is that here comes the head of these corporations to promote their next games.
Yeah.
It's really, and then you've got the same people voting on the awards that actually have money into the show and have money into the games and the ads and stuff. It's really kind of sketchy stuff, but
Yeah.
Well,
what it is.
it's funny because even I think Jeff Gerstmann was involved in the voting for the winners, and he was also nominated for like something.
Trending Gamer.
Trending Gamer. Oh, but my favorite award given out was to I think it was Esports Gamer of the Year, where Nadeshot was just sitting down, just kind of like hanging out in the background, and Jeff Keighley was like, "Oh, can you come here for a second?" And then they just gave him the trophy because he won. He was literally just sitting in the crowd, and he just brought him over. Very awkward.
All of your points are absolutely valid. You know, it's interesting. I look at this slightly differently in 2014 than I would have even a couple of years ago. You know, with the Press Row podcast, we've had some sponsorships over the course of this year. Not a lot, not every episode. You know, we've experimented with ways to try to make it a little easier to produce from a financial standpoint. And I can also really empathize with what Jeff Keighley was trying to do. He paid for this thing out of his own pocket. Mm-hmm. So without sponsorships, the show wouldn't have happened. And, you know, like you said, Brian, the VGS or the VGXs or whatever those things were embarrassing. And I get the sense that Jeff Keighley wants to have a legitimate video game awards show. And it's got to be a really immense process to try to put this thing together. The only people, right, if he could get General Motors and Budweiser and IBM to be the sponsors, I'm sure he would, right? I think the reality is the only companies who are even interested in sponsoring this are the companies who make video games. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. So, yes, it's sketchy that the people who make the games are the ones sponsoring it, but without it, I don't get the sense that they would even have the show. So, you know, it's interesting. But yeah, the biggest thing is editing. You guys know, I'm obsessive compulsive about, you know, trying to keep things in the right time, not going on too long about stuff, not going on too short. Clearly, this was the first time that they did it. I think it probably 90 minutes is like the right amount of time to me for a show like this. You have quick cuts. You have very short things. You reduce the amount of things moving on. You want to have celebrities because people like celebrities. You want to have, you know, a musical act here and there, but it's all about balance. So I think they're going to learn a lot from this year. But I get the sense that just like video game websites, I don't think that there is a market to sponsor these things except for the companies who make video games. I could be wrong, but that's just the sense that I get. And frankly, the Press Row Podcast doesn't take sponsorships from video game making companies, which is one of the reasons why we don't have that many sponsors on the show, because it's tough to convince people that aren't in the video game business that the people who play video games are actually very appealing to advertise to. So, all right, let's see.
Well, you forgot our opinions on the winner of the sports game category, Rich.
Right, no, that's where I was going next. So the nominees were FIFA 15, NBA 2K15. Those were the only legit sports titles. And the other nominees for the sports/racing video game of the year was Trials Fusion, Mario Kart 8, and Forza Horizon 2. TJ Larriman had the best tweet of the night when he said, just so you know, the real sports game of the year is awarded by the Press for Podcast. TJ, you are 100% accurate.
Yep.
You are on the official panel that votes for the Press for Podcast Sports Video Game of the Year. Well done, sir. That's what I have to say to you.
That's what I'm here for, Rich.
I thought I had the best tweet of the year, which is, the NBA 2Ks, the FIFAs, the Maddens, got to step their game up if you want to be thought of as a competitor to Mario Kart.
Well, they had the Luigi stare, so I don't think they could be beaten.
I mean, it's almost like putting a mobile sports game up with a console sports game for sports game of the year when you put Mario Kart 8 and Trials Fusion against FIFA and NBA 2K. I mean, I know that racing games are part of sports. I mean, we talk about racing games sometimes on the show, but I think you could have had a racing game and a sports game as separate categories, and it would have been better. But I think again, it just gives our award a little more legitimacy. Brian, would you have if you had to keep it as sports/racing in a single category, what would you have substituted out, and what would you have substituted in as a nominee?
Well, I don't even, I don't know if I would classify Trials Fusion as a racing game.
Right.
And Mario Kart is more of an action, it's like, I don't know if that's a pure racing game. Like, to me, racing game is a pure racing game, whether that's a NASCAR game or a Forza but even still then, those really don't share qualities with a traditional, like, league licensed sports game. There's nothing in common between FIFA and Mario Kart, or FIFA and even Forza Horizon 2. There's really nothing in common. So grouping them together, I mean, I saw someone tweeted or posted, when are we going to get to the RPG slash, action?
Right.
Just like combining two genres that have nothing to do with each other, because maybe they don't feel like there's enough to fill it out on their own. Yeah. I mean, Mario Kart was going to win this because it's Nintendo. Nintendo won almost everything that night.
Yep.
So it's and then only two sports games got recognition as though they were the only ones. So.
And they weren't even the two best sports games, right, TJ Lauerman?
You damn right. Hey.
Oh boy, are we giving something away?
No, we're not.
Some of those sports games, maybe.
Would you have substituted anything out and substituted anything in, keeping the racing/sports hybrid category the same, TJ?
Just leave it, I guess. Why not? I mean, nothing I could say is going to change that. I mean, FIFA's kind of stale to me, but that's a whole other conversation for another time. But I mean, sure, Mario Kart is fun. If I had a Wii U, if more people had a Wii U, maybe more people would think that Mario Kart's a really fun game.
I can't really complain too much because my son and I play Mario Kart 8 a lot, and it is spectacular fun. So it's a deserving winner. I don't know if it's a deserving winner of the sports game category, but I'm glad it won something because it's a great game. So
were there just not that many racing games that they had to put these together?
Well,
I can only think of Forza and Mario Kart.
Well, you couldn't put Drive Club in there because it doesn't work.
Well, sure you could. You could just.
By the way, the new update to Drive Club with the weather, really impressive. Now is a great time if you haven't played Drive Club, if you haven't bought it, to go give that a shot. Go rent that because the new update that went today, I checked it out for about half an hour. Very impressive. So.
More importantly, where do I rent a video game from, Rich?
Redbox.
Redbox
does not have next-gen titles from the last time.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. It might be your particular Redbox then, because all mine, every one. Just go in and search the games, and then come up on their website. You'll see the locations and stuff.
I don't believe you.
You better, because I've rented from there for like 2 years, or not 2 years. The systems haven't been out that long. But I was getting them through there last year. Even at launch, they had a few. It's select titles. There's usually like 15 for each of those systems.
I mean, I'm literally looking on it right now. It says Xbox 360, Wii, or PS3.
No.
All right. Well, hey, this.
No, we need to argue about this more, Rich.
Is the box even red? It's clear. Let's get it right.
There's also a service called GameFly, DJ, in case you haven't heard about that. It does exist.
Use the postal service? Get out of here, buddy.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening and for watching tonight. We appreciate it. This will be part of the Press Row podcast that will come out this Friday. There's also a extra super special segment coming out this Friday featuring a reunion of sorts, which those of you who know me might be interested in with a couple of friends that I'm getting together with a little later this week that will be part of the show as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, as well as hopefully an interview with the developer about an upcoming sports game. So it should be a packed show this Friday. That is the Press Row podcast. If you have not already downloaded and listened to last week's episode that came out on Friday, 2014, the year in review, it has already been listened to more than the last few episodes before it combined. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from that. It's always good to have most of the whole gang back together, Chris Sanner being the only guy who happened to be out sailing in the Caribbean. I mean, come on, who does that? Terrible.
Who accepts the invite and then goes out sailing in the Caribbean?
Chris Sanner. That's who does that. So be sure to be either on the lookout for what's coming up or go make sure that you check out last week's episode. So on behalf of Brian Weedeye from Pasta Padre, thank you, sir. And on behalf of TJ Lyman for That Sports Gamer, I am Rich Grisham. As always, thank you everybody for listening and for watching. We appreciate it, and we will be back again real soon. Cheers.